Good evening. I'm Jenna Nichols with CAPS, and I'm the Deputy Project Manager for the LYNX Silverline project. Our team is here tonight to give a presentation on the preliminary staff recommendations for Focus Area 5, which is Independence Boulevard from Idlewild Road to just south of I-485 at CPCC Levine. This is our 5th live virtual public meeting, and you can find the 4 previously recorded Focus Area meetings, including presentations and Q&A, on the CAPS YouTube page. Just as a note, we do have a panel of technical experts who will be assisting on some of the live Q&A after the presentation. As a reminder to our panelists, please remain on mute until the Q&A portion of the meeting. For participants, please log into your Gmail or YouTube account to participate in the live Q&A portion of the meeting. For best quality streaming, we recommend that you log off any organizational VPN and post questions in the chat box to be answered at the end of the meeting. Thank you. So we have a really brief, straightforward agenda. Tonight, we're going to go over a project overview and discuss how we got through some alignment refinement. And then we'll show you our focus area preliminary staff recommendations. And we'll finish up this session with a question and answer portion. So the team that's putting forward the LYNX Silverline project is led by Andy Mock, Senior Project Manager, myself, Jenna Nichols, Deputy Project Manager, Ajnal Poole, Public Information and Communications Officer. She's the one who does all the community and public outreach for our team. John Howard, the TOD Project Manager. TOD stands for Transit Oriented Development, and that's looking at the land use around the stations and the vision for those stations. And then we have Jason Lawrence. He's the Rail Trail Project Manager, and he's putting forward a team that's seeking to develop a vision for a continuous a continuous rail trail that goes the entire length of the LYNX Silverline light rail. So just as a note, this slide's really to show you that we are part of a much bigger puzzle that's trying to pull a lot of things together as one cohesive vision. That really includes all of the jurisdictions along the Silverline, including the city of Belmont, city of Charlotte, the towns of Matthews, Stallings, and Indian Trail, all of their planning organizations, including the Gaston, Union, and Mecklenburg County MPOs. It also includes NCDOT, who has many projects that are being coordinated with the Silverline. In addition to that, most of the roads that the 26-mile corridor will cross are owned by NCDOT, so they're an important stakeholder. Also within CATS, we have significant outreach from a regional perspective through the Connect Beyond effort, looking at how transit can serve the larger region, and we coordinate with that effort. We also ensure that we're coordinating with the Charlotte 2040 plan and that we're taking into account the 2030 system plan, which looks at developing corridors that are identified in the plan. As I said before, there are multiple components of the Silverline program related to transit-oriented development and the rail trail. So we'll talk a little bit more about those as the presentation continues. This map shows the preliminary staff recommendation in purple. It's 26 miles long and it touches 5 jurisdictions and 3 counties and includes 29 stations and 1 maintenance facility. For perspective, the Silverline is 3 times bigger than the Blue Line and Blue Line extension projects. Those were each about 9 miles apiece. So to help break it up into more easily digestible pieces for presentation purposes, we divided it into 6 focus areas. You can see the focus areas that are highlighted with different colors behind the purple line. We have previously presented focus area 1, 2, 3, and 4, and tonight we'll be looking at focus area 5. Just a quick overview of that preliminary staff recommendation. It will start in Belmont and follow Wilkinson Boulevard, past the airport into Center City with a transfer point at Charlotte Gateway Station, as well as 11th Street for the Blue Line. And then it'll go out Independence Boulevard, past Bojangles, transitioning from Independence to Monroe Road, and then out to the town of Matthews and into Union County for Stallings and Indian Trail stops. Later on in the presentation, we will get into more detail on what the recommendations are for Focus Area 5. However, before we drill down into any details, we want to keep it at a high level for a moment and talk about the preliminary purpose of the project, or why are we doing this project? This is all part of a general statement that we make through the environmental process of the project, and we presented this to the public back in September during our round 2 public meetings. but I'll briefly go over it again. Our preliminary purpose of the project is to provide a competitive and reliable transit alternative, to improve local connectivity and access to housing, employment, and community services in the corridor, to promote opportunities for development, to provide a transit system that is financially sustainable to build, operate, and maintain, and to preserve and protect the natural and built environment. This past fall, we completed what is called early scoping, which is a federal environmental process that you go through with very large, complex projects to provide the state and regulatory/permitting agencies the opportunity to take a high-level look at the project and see if there's any big issues or any fatal flaws that we need to be aware of early on. It's very important to not only engage with the public, but also the agencies that we'll be working with over the life of the project. As part of that early scoping effort, we did prepare and present the preliminary purpose and need of the project. There was also a review of our previous studies, including the Southeast and West Corridor studies that have been studied over the last 20 years. There was a review of the alignment refinement options and potential station locations, and we received public and agency input on those. There was also a review of the potential environmental concerns, and there was a review of the public engagement methods. And that was one thing that was unique for this project, that we've been figuring out how to best present this massive amount of information and engage with the public in a new virtual environment that was put upon us by this pandemic. So we really take some pride in how we quickly pivoted to the virtual environment, and we're always looking for innovative ways to work through things and any input from the public and internal and external stakeholders. Taking a look at the public engagement statistics from the fall, we've received about 800 or more comments during round 2. And the survey responses and comments that we received really suggest that people are supportive of the project and the preliminary purpose and need, with their top priorities being identified as local connectivity and travel time. There was nearly 90% of respondents. Again, they agreed with the preliminary purpose and need of the project, and there was a lot of support for it. 4 out of 5 respondents thought alternatives considered were adequate, but there are always other suggestions that were considered. So where are we as far as project progression? We're currently in what we call pre-project development, which is really just the very early stages of design, looking at what's a feasible alignment that can go from Belmont to Indian Trail. Part of that effort is taking a look at the alignment that was adopted in 2019 and getting into more detail, as well as looking at the opportunities for transit-oriented development. Then, as I mentioned, we completed early scoping this past fall, and in the next couple of months, we will be taking that refined alignment to our governing board, the Metropolitan Transit Commission, for adoption of a refined locally preferred alternative, or what we call an LPA, later this spring. Once we have an adopted LPA, then we will begin our more detailed environmental and engineering studies, as well as begin some more focused station area planning work. And that will look at land use improvements and capital improvements to complement the stations. And we'll also be looking at other goals such as affordable housing and the like. And so this will all kick off once that alignment is adopted and we have more certainty about where the stations will be. All of that work will prepare us to be able to request entry into project development. That's a stage within the Federal Transit Administration, or FTA, in their project process. So it's a necessary step in eventually being able to compete for federal transit funding through the Capital Investment Grant Program. And that's when we would complete the environmental process, 65% engineering and beyond, some design plans, and then some more detailed and informed cost estimates. Once we enter project development, we do have to be completed with that stage within 2 years. So it's really important to have all of our ducks in a row before we officially request that entry into project development from the FTA. So the next few slides will really speak to the alignment, refinement, and evaluation process. I like to show this slide because it's helpful in visually describing where we are with the project. I think a lot of people think we are a lot further along than we actually are. We're really at the very beginning of this process. This system planning effort that concluded in 2019 identified a general, locally preferred alternative corridor that was not overly specific. It was a general route that took you from Belmont to Matthews, and also noted that we should evaluate alignments going into Union County. So the way that we've approached this was we took that general corridor, the fat line on the left side of the screen, and we broke it into, we tried to determine where that was the alignment was going to go exactly. Would it be up in the air? Would it be below the ground? Would it be in the middle of the road or side running? Where would the stations be? All that kind of stuff. And that led us to develop over 100 different alignment options. That's represented by the squiggly dashed lines in the middle of the screen. We then shortlisted those 100+ alignments based on a decision-making criteria that we created through the use of conversations with stakeholders and the public. And we then use that decision-making criteria to take the list of 100+ alignments down to one refined LPA. So that's the stage that we're in right now on the right side of the screen, where we have generally narrowed the alignment down to one preferred recommended alignment that we're presenting tonight. So again, once we had the 100+ alignment options, we did we really did look at those alignment options with consideration for a number of factors. And some of those factors are shown on this slide. There's a good amount of engineering evaluation that needs to be taken into account to refine the high-level conceptual planning and assess the feasibility of certain horizontal and vertical curvature and other baseline geometric design criteria. So we really dug into that alignment to understand the feasibility and the trade-offs of one alignment versus another. There's also a big focus on environmental considerations because this project is anticipated to compete for federal funding, which means that we have to follow NEPA, or the National Environmental Policy Act. So we are required to go through a very thorough vetting of the environmental impacts and identify how and if we can mitigate them in some way. Examples of environmental concerns are floodplain impacts, water quality issues, sensitive communities, historic properties, those sorts of things. Additionally, there's been a lot of growth in Charlotte and therefore many changes in the corridor since the planning studies were concluded. So we need to take these changes into consideration and see if there are adjustments that should be made. For example, there could be a conflict where perhaps there wasn't one previously, and that might require alignment shifts or additional coordination. Much of the focus of the early phase has been going through this robust public engagement process and taking time to get agency input as well. And along those same lines, we really want to make sure that there's a lot of time for coordination with other public and private projects along the corridor. For example, as I previously mentioned, over half of the Silver Line alignment is in or adjacent to the NCDOT right-of-way, and there are at least 7 or 8 major NCDOT projects that we are coordinating with. And another good example is coordinating with large projects like the Charlotte Gateway Station. And lastly, of course, many people from the CATS and city team, as well as some of our other stakeholders like NCDOT, have experience working on the design and construction of the Blue Line and the Blue Line extension. And so we wanted to take some time to make sure we are implementing our best lessons learned from those projects and bringing them into the Silver Line so we can have the best project possible. So I've talked about the alignment refinement process that led us to identify over 100 different alignment options. But once we had those 100 different alignment options, we needed to take it down to one. So the way we did this was through an evaluation of benefits and risks. The benefits we're seeking to maximize when we compare one alignment versus another are that we want to make sure we have the best possible travel time because everyone wants a fast and reliable transit trip. We want good local connectivity, meaning that we want to make sure people can get from wherever they are to wherever they're going via light rail, whether you're walking or biking to a station, or if you're a bus rider making a transfer, or if you're an auto user trying to get to a park and ride. We want to make sure that you can easily access the light rail stations. We also want to promote and maximize transit-oriented development. Those are some of the secondary benefits that are enabled by the light rail, and really that has to do with land use and city building and creating those great places that we're all shooting for around the stations. All the while, we're trying to weigh those benefits against risks because we want to be able to push forward a project that we can implement. So from a risk standpoint, we want to make sure we're managing our capital and operating costs. Again, we do have to compete in a very competitive federal funding process, and we compete against projects across the country, all transit projects across the country. And so we need to be as cost effective as we can be. It's also always important to be able to ensure we can continue to provide service. So we need to be able to make sure that we're minimizing our operating costs as well. And then, of course, I've talked a lot about environmental screening, so we really need to minimize those risks. And it also is, not just because that's the right thing to do, but because that is part of that federal environmental review process that's tied to federal funding as well. And then, of course, coordination with others is always important, because poor coordination or difficult coordination can really slow down a project, and it can even stop the project depending on where we are and who we're coordinating with. So that's an important risk to consider when we're trying to move the project forward. So this is just a quick process slide to show you sort of a flow chart of the way we approached examining the alignments against each other. So you start with a least risk option and a most benefit option. If those two things are the same, awesome, then great, that's easy. We select the one that has the least amount of risk and has the most benefits. But oftentimes that's not the case. We need to, evaluate, okay, are the risks that we've identified something that we can live with? Are these risks acceptable? Can we still implement the project with these risks? If yes, then all right, then we can select the option that has the most benefit but has acceptable risks. If not, we need to go back to selecting the least risk option. So that all leads us to what we've come up with for our recommended refined locally preferred alternative alignment. And Senior Project Manager Andy Mock will take you through those recommendations.
Thank you, Jenna. I'm going to start with a map, and just as a note, we did send out mailers to everyone within a half mile of any of the alignment alternatives with these maps that show the preliminary staff recommendations. So hopefully lots of folks who are on tonight received this, and it's not the first time they're seeing this. But I'm going to quickly go through and orient folks to this map, and then at a high level, and then I'm going to walk through the a little more detail on the next couple of slides before we get into the Q&A. So just as a note, the way to interpret this map, the purple line is the preliminary staff recommendation, what we intend to propose to the public tonight to get feedback on. If you see a gray line, you see a lot of gray lines around the Village Lake area, those are alignments that we have evaluated but are not recommending at this time for one reason or another. Also, if you see a yellow triangle with a exclamation mark, that shows that there has been a change from the previously adopted locally preferred alternative from 2016. And so that's just to note the public. Each one of these, there's 3 boxes, and these boxes imply a decision zone or communicate a decision zone where we made a major kind of evaluation or decision. And so in each one of those boxes, and we have a low inset box here at Village Lake, it has a couple key bullet points for takeaway points for the public to understand. So I'm just going to quickly go through this one in the decision zones before I go into the more detailed map slides. So in this case, the first box or decision zone is this area around Village Lake. I say that this is a very complicated area and something that we spend a lot of time talking with the community and internal and external stakeholders about the right way to traverse from Independence Boulevard to Monroe. And that's kind of the goal from the system planning back in 2016, was to figure out a way to get from Independence to Monroe to seek development opportunities and reimagining of Monroe Road. So in 2016, an alignment that followed this generally is basically the same alignment that goes from Independence to Monroe through the Village Lake community was adopted. The alignment that we're putting forward for public input today is really very similar to that alignment. It really hasn't changed much. So the real difference from what we had before and what we're proposing now, and the reason why there's really a triangle here, is that we're proposing to have a station within the Village Lake community to provide direct service to that community. However, the trade-off with this alignment and the station is that there will be some residential displacement of the multifamily communities in this area. So we're working to mitigate those as much as possible, but we do feel like there will be some displacement of multifamily units. However, the city, CATS and the city are going to collaborate together on an affordable housing, complementary affordable housing strategy that John Howard with our TOD team will talk about during the Q&A. The next decision zone is along Monroe Road. And really it's about how you transition or how you traverse along Monroe Road. So there really isn't much of a change from the previously adopted recommendation. We're still following along Monroe Road. I think the previous assumption was that we would be in the middle of Monroe Road, like in the median, kind of like North Tryon Street. However, we're kind of evaluating an alternative that goes along the side of Monroe Road for a couple of reasons, such as traffic impacts, community impacts. We haven't firmed that up yet, but that's something we are kind of leaning to and looking at as an alternative, but it still basically follows the Monroe Road corridor. It then transitions near Matthews Township Parkway over CSX and into downtown Matthews. And this is our next decision zone. And so as you can see, this is a change from the previously adopted locally preferred alternative, which went out along Sam Newell and then into across the campus, Novant's campus, and then out Matthews Mint Hill Road to Independence Point Parkway and beyond. So the adjustment or the recommendation is to adjust that alignment to actually come through downtown Matthews to directly serve downtown with a station with an alignment that would go along Matthews Street and Matthews Mint Hill Road, with a station right near Trade and Matthews Street. And so really, when we started to look at the alternative there, the benefit that we're really trying to achieve was a station that directly serves downtown Matthews with a very accessible and very visible access for the community to both, so Matthews could be a destination, but also folks could come from Matthews to wherever they're going. So those were our three recommendation or decision zones that we're putting out for public comment. And in my next slides, I'll kind of walk through a little bit more detail, and then we can go and show the online open house and Q&A. So coming from along Independence Boulevard, the light rail alignment would be on the south, and then we would be traversing through the intersections of Idlewild and Conference. We're thinking that the current approach is to kind of reconfigure some of those intersections or some of those interchanges so the light rail can fit through there. Follow along the southern side of Independence Boulevard up to Wallace Lane near the Sharon Forest future interchange. Traverse or bridge over Wallace Road, and then along the backside of Woodbury Forest through the reserved right-of-way, and then in through the Village Lake community on an alignment that looks like this, with a station here near the Village Lake Drive. The light rail alignment would then elevate up and over Monroe Road, and then down for a station in the area near McAlpine Park Drive. Opportunities for access to McAlpine Greenway and future development opportunities, a lot of residential opportunities for access here as well. And then transition to the Monroe Road right away along this section of Monroe here. Then going from the western side to the eastern side, somewhere in this area. This is very kind of conceptual at this point, but we're still trying to figure out a lot of that detail, but we do feel like the side running is kind of seems like the way to go. Up to the town of Matthews, which begins here near the Family Dollar, near Galleria, and then transition over out of Monroe Road right away, over CSX, and then underneath 51, and then into downtown Matthews with the station right near downtown. It would then continue on along the side of Matthews-Minhill Road, out and across the future Independence Point Parkway, near the ENT, the Matthews ENT district, providing service to the Sportsplex. And then the end of Focus Area 5 would be at CPCC with the terminus as anticipated by the Metropolitan Transit Commission. Focus Area 6 is the evaluation of the extension of that into Union County, and we'll talk about that on Tuesday night at a similar public meeting. So John, Howard, you want to come in and talk about next steps?
Sure thing. Thanks, Andy. So right now we are in the public engagement round 3, part of our public outreach. We're presenting to you again preliminary staff recommendations and to get your input. The next step will be to go to the Metropolitan Transit Commission to present recommendations to them for information and anticipation to go for a decision in April for the refined LPA. And the next steps after that, the design team will advance the light rail design of the Silver Line, and they'll go into environmental surveying and planning. And the TOD team, which is what I'm a part of, will begin our early station area planning. What makes us a little bit different from previous efforts is that we're doing early planning work in advance of construction of the Silver Line. So that involves, again, looking at all the station areas along the 26 miles, generally like a half mile around each station area is what we're calling a station area. Also looking at rail trail alignments. That's what Jason Lawrence will talk about in a little bit. And also a part of our station area planning effort, again, as a lesson learned from Blue Line, is talking about affordable and mixed income housing and to develop strategies to have more diverse and mixed incomes around our half mile station areas. And that planning work will begin again after the decision is made on the refined alignment sometime in the spring, and the summer we'll begin our station area planning work. And I hand it back over to Andy.
Yeah, thank you, John. And actually, I want to take back up for a second, if I can, and hand it over to Jason Lawrence, who might want to talk about rail trail for a moment. I'm sorry, I skipped right over his slide. So I want to maybe hand it back to Jason, who can talk about the progression of rail trail.
Thank you, Andy. As long as I don't get forgotten, that's all that matters, right? So appreciate that. So yeah, great. So that, Andy brought up a good point about, the rail trail is part of this programmatic approach to looking at the Silver Line more as a kind of overall program, and mixed up with, TOD and design and rail trail. We heard through early planning all the way back to 2016 about the importance of these pedestrian connections. So along this corridor in the map that you see in front of you, we're looking at ways to have that continuous pedestrian element along the whole 26-mile long project. Parts of the project, the rail trail will be able to be close to the light rail, similar to what we see in South End. So sections that are along the project between Sharon Amity and Idlewild may look more like that kind of section. Around the interchanges, we'll have to get creative about how we achieve those crossings. And then once we get into the Monroe Road section, we'll be working with a rebuilt Monroe Road cross section and building multi-use paths with that project. And the goal is to have a collection of pedestrian and bike elements that stitch together this entire corridor with key pedestrian connections. And this focus area is really important because of the McAlpine Creek Greenway, and being able to make the connection along this Silver Line rail trail to that, connecting all the way to the Cross Charlotte Trail, Little Sugar Creek Greenway that is west of this project near Uptown Charlotte, a really key connection that this east-west connection will be able to achieve.
Thank you, Jason. So I'm going to pause out of this for a moment, this presentation, and share the online open house. We do have a online open house that's available 24/7, which shows all the information you see tonight, as well as some mapping. Apologies, I don't see that. Oh, there we go. Show all windows. There we go. Can never find it when I'm looking for it. So what you see right there on the screen is the online open house. and it shows it's available on ridetransit.org on our website. If you go to the LYNX Silverline tab, you can click on that, and it will take you to an online open house. And really, it's just a landing page really to kind of learn and get comfortable with the Silverline project. All the information that we presented tonight is available to you there. So you have the map, you'll have the write-ups, you'll have certain slides and videos showing how we made decisions. But one of the key things that a lot of folks really like and use is the virtual map. So I'll kind of zoom down to that. And this is the nice thing about this is if you do the presentation, you hear the presentation, you kind of forget about what we're talking about or this allows you an opportunity to kind of refresh with everything we kind of talked about, including the preliminary staff recommendations are all available here. But this is the online open house virtual map. Provides you an opportunity. It's a dynamic map with the purple alignment being, our preliminary recommendations. So you can kind of zoom in around and pan around and take a look at that. This is a nice amenity. And I'll be using that for some of the Q&A later tonight as well. But also one of the key things we're really trying to also promote is our survey. And so if you would, we would request everyone fill out the survey results, which allows you an opportunity to provide input on the particular focus areas. And we'll also put you in a raffle for a $100 gift card, Visa gift card. So I think there's, we've received a lot of input from folks based on our survey and the raffle. So I request all the folks take an opportunity to do that, to provide us that input and help us have the best information we can as we continue to refine and formulate what the Silverline is. With that, maybe I'll pass it back to Ajanelle, who will walk us through the beginning of the Q&A.
Thank you, Andy, and thank you, Jenna, Jason, and John. As Andy said, my name is Ajanelle Poole. I am the Community Relations Specialist for CATS and also for the LYNX Silverline project. We appreciate everyone that is joining us on YouTube and other meetings this evening. I've said this a couple times in our meetings before. When we began our outreach effort for LYNX Silverline last year, we had intentions of doing in-person meetings where everyone can stand over a map and the project team can talk with individuals one-on-one. But unfortunately, then and still now, we are operating under a pandemic. So the team, we are trying to do our best to present this very high level complex information to you guys in a way that is safe for everyone. So that is why we are doing these live virtual public meetings. And I always have to acknowledge that this is not always the best way that we like to share information. However, it is one of our safe means to engage with the public around this project. So we appreciate with everyone joining us this evening. I'm just going to reiterate a few things that Jenna mentioned earlier. We do have a list of panelists of experts to help us answer some questions during our Q&A. I'm going to ask panelists remain on mute until answering a question. And when you do, please turn your camera on and introduce yourself, your title and your organization. We have a couple questions on YouTube already, but I want to ask all of our attendees, if you would like to ask the project team a question, please sign into your Gmail or your YouTube and type the question into the chat box. And we'll make sure the project team addresses those. I would suggest signing off of any VPN or organizational servers just for the best connection. We'll be answering those questions as well as questions we received prior via phone, mail, or email. We will do our best to get through all the questions this evening. However, if we do not have time to get to your questions, we will include them in a frequently asked Q&A document that will go on the website. As a note, we will focus on focus area 5 this evening. And with that, I'm going to kick off our Q&A with a very frequent question that we typically get, and I'm going to address this one to Andy. As you alluded to earlier, and that's going to do as well, there are complicated areas throughout the entire 26-mile alignment, but focus area 5 and the transition from Independence Boulevard to Monroe Road is extremely complex. We received several questions from property owners in this area. So Andy, do you mind addressing some of those concerns around potential property acquisition?
Sure, and I agree with the observation. This focus area 5 is a very complicated area. Anytime you make a transition from run right away one major right of way to another, it's always challenging. So as it relates to right of way acquisition, there absolutely will be right of way acquisition necessary for the LYNX Silver Line. And so we've got a lot of questions over the last couple of weeks. We get a lot of questions all the time about right away. So I just want to take a moment to kind of talk about how that process works. So at this point, we are at the very beginning of the design process. We really don't have a full understanding for the footprint or what is necessary for the project right now. That really requires much more detailed design to understand where the slopes are going to be, where the edge of the project is, where will the utilities go. So it's premature for us to really have that understanding. And so before we can really begin any right-of-way acquisition process, we need to have a full and complete understanding of the footprint of the project. And so that's going to take a couple of years for us to go through the entire project to really have that full understanding of design and feel comfortable enough to really begin acquisition. On top of that, we also have a requirement to complete the environmental process. So there's really kind of two big steps that we really need to take. It's the completion of the design and where we have enough comfort so that we know exactly how much property that we need. And also that we complete what's called a record of decision. And that is basically the completion of the environmental impact statement. So once we have those two things, we're going to know a lot more about exactly what we need, and then we'll be reaching out to folks along the entire corridor and making offers to acquire the necessary property. So, and I would say that we're definitely a couple years away from any of that happening. Could be 3 to 4 to 5 years, depending on how things go and the decisions that are made. But I just wanted to kind of level set, because I think a lot of people, as Jenna kind of alluded, a lot of people think we're ready to go, we're ready to hit shovels in the ground. We're at the very beginning of this process, and it's going to be a while before we're ready to start making offers to folks.
Thank you, Andy, for walking through that question that we tend to get a lot. I have another question and similar to that I'm going to direct to John Howard. We've gotten this question, we've asked it a couple focus area meetings before. When it comes to the light rail and the economic development that comes with it, there's always concerns about gentrification and resident displacement. You talked about the TOD study that you're doing. How does that study help address some of the concerns that we've heard about those issues?
Thank you, Janelle. So, again, we learned a lot of lessons from Blue Line and BLE in terms of gentrification and displacement. We sometimes get penalized a lot for not thinking ahead in terms of more inclusionary type housing around our station areas. So again, part of this study is looking proactively at strategies for including more mixed income housing around our stations. And another lesson that we learned, of course, is having a more inclusive staff. So I want to recognize Miles Vaughn, who's on our call. He's the Housing Services Department Manager, to have these experts, if you will, on our teams to help talk about strategies for what the city's doing now in terms of providing affordable housing in developments and leveraging that expertise as well into the planning effort as we look at, again, that half mile around our station areas. So Miles, if you want to add anything to that, please do.
Sure, John, and thanks a lot. As John indicated, my name is Miles Vaughn. I'm with the city's Department of Housing and Neighborhood Services. I head up the Housing Services Division, which is the division that oversees the vast majority of our affordable housing related activity. And one of the things that is being done as a lesson, let's say best practice as well from the Blue Line, is that of making sure that this division is thoroughly engaged with John, as well as our planning department, Katz and others there with regard to how as the alignment becomes more refined, how we're going to address the displacement, potential gentrification, as well as the take advantage of opportunities to ensure the development and preservation of affordable housing throughout the entire corridor there. So we're going to do a couple of things. We're going to make sure that we leverage some of the tools we currently have in our toolbox, such as utilizing some of the repair programs to provide assistance to households, limited income households who may want to remain in their house, even though their home is particularly in a gentrifying area there, as well as encouraging developers who develop affordable housing as well as mixed income housing to develop within the corridor as well. So that could be something that's along the lines of using our site selection tool to incentivize developers to do so. So the key point, again, as John referenced, is we're engaged with this process. We're going to weigh in and make sure that we give the opportunity to preserve as well as develop affordable housing.
Thank you, Miles and John. So we're going to take a couple questions from YouTube now. Who determines when the project development phase begins? Did I hear correctly? It must be completed in 2 years once entered. And Jenna or Andy, which one of you guys want to go ahead and take that one?
So I'll take a stab, and then Andy can fill in where I leave off. So that's determined by, so the project team will do as much preparation as possible. The project development phase is limited by 2 years. However, that's just for certain activities that need to take place. And in general, that's, including doing design at least up to 30%, but the FTA, the Federal Transit Administration, also encourages the project teams to develop engineering beyond that if they feel like that will help some of the other submittals that need to be provided, some of the other information that needs to be provided. That's all in order to go into the engineering phase. So, which is where you go from what 30% design and beyond into final plans is the engineering phase. So there's those certain activities have to be completed. Andy spoke about the final record of decision. So a lot of those activities in that project development phase really do tie to some of the environmental review process and those 30% preliminary design plans. I don't know if Andy can add to that.
No, I mean, I think you nailed it. I think just as a note, just to clarify, because of the size and complication is in that 2 year requirement to be done with project development. That's why we're spending more time up front, because we want to feel real comfortable that we have a project that we can actually, proceed and implement once we start that clock. So, we're spending, a lot of extra time up front to really get our heads around this project so that we can put ourselves in the best position to implement it through that process and not run out of time through that FTA process.
Thank you, Andy and Jenna. And Andy, you touched on this briefly during your presentation, but we have a question that says, what impact will the Silver Line have on Monroe Road, where it runs down the center of the road? Will the road be widened? And if so, what side of the road will be expanded?
So the current thinking of Monroe Road, and this is all kind of work in progress, design work in progress, is from the area near McAlpine Creek up to the other side of Sardis. Kind of the idea is that the light rail would be on the side of the road, or the southern side of the road, not widening the road like North Tryon Street, but be more on the side. And then after, it would bridge over Sardis Road and then transition to a station on the other side near Galleria. So the idea is to be kind of side running on this area to minimize community impacts and as relates to the construction of the road, and to take advantage of right of way that might be available for us, or abandoned right of way that might be available for us on the side. So that's kind of the idea right now. Again, this is kind of again, work in progress design, but that's kind of the thinking as it stands today.
Thank you, Andy. What are some of the lessons learned from the construction of the Blue Line and extension that have influenced the design of the Silver Line?
Oh boy, that's a question we can pass around. Jenna can take the first shot at that one.
Yeah, I'll take it first, and I'll pass it to you, hot potato. So we certainly learned about our curves that we designed. Having really tight curves for light rail can present some operational and maintenance issues. And we've, over the course of the 20 years that CATS has been in existence and has had practice with our light rail alignments, we've learned the importance of making sure we're getting drainage right and that we're using curves that don't cause maintenance issues or passenger comfort issues. And so we've updated some of our design criteria to make sure we're using broader curves, not quite as tight. So people could see that reflected in how we navigate through areas like Village Lake or elsewhere on the project where we're trying to make those curves not quite as tight. We also learned that it's not great to have a crossing through an intersection at an angle. So there's a lot of those sort of operational and design lessons we've learned, and I'll save some of the other lessons learned for my colleagues.
I mean, we could probably talk all day about lessons learned. I'll just add one, then I'll pass it to Jason. And one thing that there was some commentary back through some community feedback and planning feedback about the unintended consequences of being in the median of North Tryon Street. And so there were some issues related to permeability of the light rail, and so there were some comments received that sometimes being in the middle of the road decreases the ability for roads to cross us, driveways to cross that. And so I think there was some lessons learned from the planning team about the benefits of being not in the middle of the road, and also has impacts to day-to-day light rail operations as well. Jason, you want to take one?
Yeah, I would really just say our just overall approach to the project and doing TOD planning, rail trail planning, and coordinating with all these other kinds of projects. And we certainly coordinated with projects for the Blue Line and Blue Line extension, but we didn't have transit-oriented development study at this early of a phase in the project. We didn't have a rail trail study for Blue Line and Blue Line extension. And so doing all these things early on will help us create a project that will be able to have all those benefits experienced early in the phases.
Thank you, team. Giving anyone else a chance if they want to jump in, but okay, I don't see any. Another question, this might be for Jason or Andy. For stations along Independence, will you add elevated pedestrian crossings for safe station access from all surrounding neighborhoods? People running across Independence is already a huge problem. It looks like Andy, did you want to address this one?
Yeah, I think that is something that we're going to evaluate. We have heard a lot of feedback through our community engagement about the desire to be able to cross across Independence Boulevard. Understandably so. I definitely have seen people cross Independence, and it's scary. And so we've received a lot of feedback. So we'll be looking at opportunities to create that permeability either with the project or with a complementary capital project. So we'll have to evaluate where are the best places to evaluate that investment. The stations does seem like a good place to start from. So we'll have to kind of evaluate as how the stations lay out and how we can best serve the adjacent neighborhoods and open up new travel markets for pedestrians that really don't exist today because of the way that Independence Boulevard is configured. It's kind of no man's land, and we hear loud and clear the desire to stitch those sides back together. And so we'll be evaluating that through in design and also working with the capital projects that are also going to complement the Silver Line.
Thank you. And this is either an Andy or John Howard question. For the Galleria Station, will it be located in the center of the road or on the side?
Yeah, so right now I'd say that we're looking at the Galleria Station to be on the side of the road, not in the center. That's our current thinking for that station. On the kind of the Independence side or the Galleria side of the road is where we're currently sketching things out.
Thank you. Are there more details of the conference station location and layout? How close to Monroe Road will it be? How will the park and ride lot be accessed both by cars and train riders?
Yeah, so we're right now we're in the process of trying to figure a lot of that out. So right now we feel pretty comfortable about how we're getting through these areas that we're coming along the southern edge, and we're going to be reconfiguring, kind of rethinking some of these interchanges, but we really aren't into that detail of access yet. I think that's one of the things once we kind of have the stations and the alignments kind of a little more firmed up, we'll be getting into a lot more details about how access will work, what kind of other network improvements are required. Also, that'll tie into some of the area planning that John and his TOD team will also be looking at. So I think that's yet to come over the next couple months. So we're not really 100% sure for how that access is going to work at the moment.
Thank you, Andy. Another question that could be for you or for John Howard. How will you develop businesses / attractions along the section? This area is nearly all car dealership and undesirable businesses. Neighborhood attractions like NODA built will increase ridership. And it looks like John Howard, would you like to answer this one?
Sure. Yes, that's one of the challenges, with land use that's existing, and then what we love to see, which is more, mixed use, different types of uses, and not just auto-centric type uses. And what we're going to do in the area planning process, one is look at what's existing on the ground today, and then look at market studies and look at what could be potentially the right type of land uses in the future. Understanding that, these stations kind of mature differently over time. These are more suburban type stations. Again, they're more car centric. So it may take time, but it may not. It depends on how the market forces will move. But normally, when rail hits the ground, then things start to change. So the main goal of the early planning study is to get set up for that. So it's not just about land use, but also about connections, whether it's streets, pedestrian and bike connections, greenway access, rail trail access, and also how it integrates with the bus system. All those things will factor into our station area planning effort, and also the station types. So all of that will factor into the future vision of these station areas. So what you see today may not be what you'll see in the next few years.
Thank you, John. Another one for Andy. Had there been any consideration for entering Monroe Road earlier at Conference Drive?
Yeah, yes, absolutely. The system planning team evaluated that back in 2016. We also took a look at that with in our early, as we started to really look at alignments. When we started to evaluate all those different alignments that Jenna was talking about, we did evaluate an alignment that came kind of off Conference and came up Monroe. And really one of the big things that was the red flag was the widening of Monroe. Monroe Road is just a narrow section with with single family residential on either side of it the whole way. And so the level of impact on that section of Monroe Road was really great. So that kind of level of impact kind of took us away from that alternative. And it was also, we kind of drew the same conclusion that the system plan team did back in 2016. So we did look at that, and it's just kind of scrubbed out because of that impact.
Thank you, Andy. I'm going to keep you here for this question. Can you discuss the reasoning behind choosing the LPA selection through Village Lake versus around it? Sure.
Yeah, this was something we spent a lot of time on. And I would like to note, if you see all the gray lines, we looked really far. We looked farther for new alternatives here than anywhere else on the project. So if you were to pull up the maps on other places, most of the gray lines are little shades of gray from the purple line. There's some wholesale, completely different alignments here. Ones that kind of really kind of far afield along one, just to kind of go through it. We had one that kind of came through down Lumarca and kind of came on this way. We had one that came down McAlpine Creek. And, one of the issues with McAlpine Creek was really just the environmental impacts and natural resource impacts and parkland impacts. So that was really an undesirable alternative that was probably unbuildable given the level of impact to the parks and to the natural environment. And then we did have an alternative also that kind of continued further down the whole way down here, and then made a hard right before Sardis Road, north near Creffield. So that was another one we looked at to try to evaluate. But one of the big things that the system plan team was trying to maximize in their evaluation when they initially picked the locally preferred alternative is kind of to seek to create all the benefits possible along Monroe Road as soon as possible. And so that's kind of what led them to make the initial recommendation in 2016. And frankly, that's what kind of led us back to the LPA that was adopted to try to seek those benefits and also improve upon those benefits by including a new station directly within the community. So, you know, as you can see, we did really look far afield to try to come up with a better alternative. We just couldn't do it. And that led us back to the LPA that was adopted 5 years ago.
Thank you, Andy. As a reminder, we are trying to get through all these questions as quickly as possible, but if we do not get to your question this evening, we will address them on a document on our website. Another question: when the train comes up Matthew Street, which side of the train go? I guess which side of the road will the train go on? Will it be on the ground or elevated?
Yeah, so our plan in Matthew Street, and this is based on feedback we've heard from the town, is to create an alignment that has minimum structure. So our plan is to have something that goes near at grade and right along Matthew Street on the side, right through this intersection with the station right on the other side. So the alignment there would be mostly at grade, which provides a lot of great benefits. It creates a really a right-sized, solution for the town of Matthews, and with pedestrian access right in the heart of downtown, without creating large structures which may impede the visibility in the downtown. So that was kind of our rationale for being at grade and with a station that's highly accessible and highly visible.
Thank you. Can you discuss last mile and rail trail connectivity options to the north side of Independence? So that might be Jason. I see Jason Lawrence. Thank you.
Yeah, great. Thank you. Yeah, I think really that's, the rail trail in this current locally preferred alternative, and the recommended staff recommendations would be to parallel or be very close to the rail corridor. And so on the north side of Independence, I think we would achieve those connections through station area planning to look at potential opportunities to either improve some of the already existing bridges there and make the connections there, or seek additional through a capital improvement program to make the connections across Independence.
Thank you, Jason. There's a question about these detail maps. These detail maps are available online. So as Andy mentioned earlier, please go to ridetransit.org/LYNX-Silverline. We'll make sure we leave that website in the box, in the chat box. But you can find our online open house that has all this, the maps and the interactive detailed map that Andy is using tonight. There has been another question. There has been some public opposition to the proposed transit tax from the northern part of Mecklenburg County. If that tax increase does not pass, how will that impact the Silver Line? And I will open this up to Andy. Would like to take that one.
Yeah, so I mean, to implement the Silver Line, the additional funding source needs to be identified, whether it's that sales tax or some other thing. But I think it's clear that to move forward with the Silver Line, some additional funding sources required. So I think as we continue to work with the elected officials in the community and the community starts to weigh in, we'll start to understand more about the priorities of the 2030 and beyond plan to figure out what's the right phasing or implementation for the entire system. And so I think that's something that we'll just kind of have to see how all that goes.
Thank you, Andy. Can you discuss any opportunities or threats in coordinating with the coming Independence Boulevard projects, particularly the new Village Lake Interchange?
I think we have a successful history of coordinating with NCDOT. So I think we've had some good success with that. So I don't see that as a threat. But I think that's something that it's ongoing coordination as the NCDOT continues to progress their many projects, and we are also working with them hand in hand. And that's one of the reasons that we really wanted to start this process sooner, so that as NCDOT continues to move forward with their projects, we can also have the benefit of that coordination and move forward both projects side by side. So I don't really see that as a threat at this point.
Thank you. We have time for just a few more questions. And I'm going to try to group these questions together. Will the buses 27 Monroe be discontinued and replaced by Blue Line? Jason, would you mind addressing that one?
Mind at all? Absolutely. So as a part of the Silver Line, just like with the Blue Line and Blue Line extension, we did a bus rail integration plan for both of those projects, and we'll do the same thing here for the Silver Line corridor. There certainly will be some adjustments for all the routes in here, and we will seek to make sure that the bus routes can connect to the stations. As far as the route set 27 specifically, that would be a part of that effort. But I do see that we would try to connect it to each of the stations along the corridor, particularly at Conference and at the station there near McAlpine.
Thank you, Jason. Will this project help with the old underground pipe system on Monroe Road? The Fox Hollow Townhomes condos have been affected in the past. And this might be a good opportunity to talk about some of the adjacent projects that occur with infrastructure investment. But go ahead, Andy, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I mean, I'd say that as we get into our design, I mean, it may, depending on if we impact those utilities directly, then we would replace them, and we would be working with Charlotte Water and all the local municipalities. So there may be an opportunity there. We don't know enough yet really to understand the direct impacts or benefits that we could have from a utility replacement perspective, but certainly within the scope of the project, there will be a lot of utility work to be done, utility relocations and replacements. So it might be, but we just don't know enough yet about what that subsurface utility infrastructure is. And as we continue to progress, that will become more apparent. So possibly.
Thank you. Just time for a few more questions. When will the project team address individual homeowner concerns regarding the impacts of the Silver Line to their properties? Does this happen in the development phase? And the parentheses were mainly about noise mitigation.
I think as we, going forward, as the design of the project becomes more crystallized and more clear, we'll know more about what those impacts will be. Also, through the area planning process, we'll have an understanding for kind of the land use vision around. And so, it's premature to kind of work too much directly with any particular property owner, because we don't. What the alignment that we have right now might not be the alignment that we exactly build down to the inch. So it's hard for us to work specifically with any particular property owner because the alignment is so preliminary at this point. But as we know, as we begin to continue to progress, then we can have more productive conversations with property owners about how we can remedy any concerns that they might have with the alignment that we're proceeding with.
Thank you, Andy. And we did get several questions about possible property impact and acquisition. Do you mind addressing that question? I know you did it at the beginning of Q&A, but
sure.
Again, going over our thoughts for potential property acquisition.
Yeah, so I'll just briefly go over it. For folks that didn't hear the first time, really the two big steps that need to proceed before we can begin acquiring properties are really we need to progress the design in such a way that we understand the footprint of the project, or how much property that we need. So things that are going to influence that that are not understood fully right now is where are the slopes, how far out will the slopes be, where are the walls, where are the utilities. All that is going to drive how much property that is necessary for the project. So that's a big part of it, and that's going to take a couple of years for us to really understand that and go through a number of design reviews so we're all comfortable with the property necessary. And we're also going to have to complete the environmental process through the Federal Transit Administration to get a record of decision. That gives us the environmental clearance to begin buying right away. Between the engineering work and the environmental work, that could be 3, 4, 5 years out before we're ready to start knocking on doors and making offers to folks. So that's gonna be a little while, and I think that allows us to kind of get our design more refined so that we can really have a good understanding with the property necessary to implement the project.
Thank you, Andy. We are running a little over, so I want to thank everyone who submitted their questions tonight. Again, if we did not get to your question, we will include that in a document that will go on our website. And I'm going to conclude our Q&A session for this evening. And I believe it's Jenna who will give you guys more information specifically about where you can provide comments, whether they be positive or not so positive about the project, because we are definitely looking for feedback, and that helps us with our decision making. So go ahead, Jenna.
Great, thank you, Ajna. So hopefully everyone felt like tonight was valuable and a good use of time. We are looking for your comments on our survey, which will be on our website. And you can submit those comments up to March 11th. The website is www.ridetransit.org/LYNX And you can also text to receive the survey. So text Silverline to 704-461-4441. You can send us an email if you have other comments you'd like to have documented at lynxsilverline@publicinput.com. You can also give us a call at 704-336-7433, or you can leave a voicemail with your comments. Dial 704-461-4441 and type the code 6636. And as always, you can send us some snail mail to Charlotte Area Transit System, care of Marketing Department, 3200 South Boulevard, Charlotte, North Carolina, 28209. Again, make sure you go to our website to fill out the survey. We are giving away 5 $100 Visa gift cards to folks who enter that drawing, and your comments are extremely important to us. Again, public commenting period ends March 11th, and we just want to make sure that we are getting as much input as possible, that you all stay tuned and stay involved. That project website there, the ridetransit.org/LYNXsilverline, that will be the project website for the life of the project. So as we continue to have additional rounds of public engagement, additional meetings, information on how to access that will always be housed on that website. You can also find links there for the previously recorded YouTube presentations for the other focus areas, and then also a link for how to contact us. So your input is critical in helping us make the right decisions moving forward, and we really appreciate your time tonight.